Wow, thank you for the generous offer. So, what were the challenges of starting your own firm?
I don't come from business background. My dad, and you'll see this on my bio, my dad was a cab driver. My mom was a nurse, where it's blue collar, as you can be, immigrant. I was born in India. I came my mom came to the United States, to New York in the 70s, because there was a nursing shortage in the 70s in New York. So a lot of the nurses in New York are, at least the older nurses, not now, but the older nurses are women from India and Filipino women. So that's how my mom got her visa, came here. My dad followed with me about 14 months later. I grew up in Brooklyn, going to Catholic schools. So the challenge for me is my family's total blue collar, and learning to do a business. And I've been fortunate. I have an outside CFO, CPA, I have an outside bookkeeping company. So I've had a business coach for 10 years, consultant advisor, because it's not, they don't teach you any of this stuff in law school. So law school is the most, law school is actually, and the law is actually antithetical to business. And so, you have to learn, insurances, all these different things, all these different types of lawyers I've had to hire to navigate this world. So, I'm fortunate because I'm involved in a couple different entrepreneurial groups, and I'm on the Forbes Business Council, which is a collection of small business owners. I am part of a group called Entrepreneurs Organization, which is an international group, fantastic, amazing group of people. And having been part of that, I learned from other people, not necessarily lawyers, most of them are not lawyers, about how to run a business. So easily the most challenging thing is being a lawyer, maintaining a high quality of legal representation for our clients, at the same time running a business, employees, I'm a boss. Like, I don't get a paycheck, my employees do, right? I got to make sure that they're fed, that they get and their families and their health insurance is taken care of, their pensions, which we have. So.
Well, on the other hand, what would you say are the biggest benefits of running your own firm as opposed to being a part of a criminal defense firm?
I I think it's I have the flexibility to do the things that I need to do in life, right? So I've integrated. So there's a thing called, so when you're an entrepreneur, when you run a business, everybody talks about work-life balance, right? So for me, it's work-life integration, right? So I can't shut off my business. I've been on a beach in Spain, and I've answered my cell phone for a call, right? I've done the same thing in Argentina, Australia, these different places I've been around the world. Not been to Abu Dhabi yet, so hopefully I'll make it out there once, So, it's now I have employees that can handle certain things. We have an answering system late at night because people just don't get arrested between 9 and 5, right? Monday through Friday, normal business hours, right? Often I've done consultations in my office at 3 a.m. to surrender a client who's the police are looking for him at the precinct in about an hour or so after that, right? So I've had these kind of experiences. And this all means, though, the benefit is that I'm divorced, but I have 2 young boys. I have them 50% of the time. God bless my divorce lawyer; she's fantastic. Because getting 50% custody in New York, being a male is a miracle. Because the system is very geared. That's one area that's extremely geared towards women. So sorry, get off on a little rant there, but a little plug for divorce lawyers, right? So. In that, I schedule my kids, they do Kumon, they do box. I tutor them myself. I have no outside tutor. So I go, and we go to, when prior to all this stuff, happening for a couple of years, they're boxers, I'm a boxer, I take them to train. I have professional boxers who train them. So I go, I'm there with them, I'm coaching them. I couldn't do that if I had a regular job. It'd be much more difficult. So I can schedule that. So I schedule my business trips when I don't have the kids. So there's a lot of these are the huge advantages to being a business owner if you can do that, right? So.
You talked about work-life balance, and obviously in the legal field, that is one of the big topics of discussion with very long work hours in a lot of legal environments. But other than starting your own firm and being an entrepreneur, what would you say are other advices that you have or things that other lawyers have done that have worked well for them to try to achieve a good work-life balance?
So this is something that maybe most of you are not going to want to hear, right? So the thing about, like, you know, when I say work-life balance or work-life integration as an entrepreneur, there is a lot that goes along with that. Like I said, I'm never off the clock, right? So that's the difference. Some people, a lot of people don't want that. There are a lot of people want when you go to work, you turn it off after, you know, you work your hours and then you're done. In the law, to get ahead in the law, you've got to put in a lot of hours and to get to the point. When I was a prosecutor and other people would look at their hours like 9 to 5, I was working in my first couple of years, 60 to 80 hours a week, making somewhere around $40,000 a year. And I was happy. I loved what I was doing, you know? You know, I adjusted my lifestyle. I had roommates, you know, and I had a rent control department in Brooklyn. You know, life was good, you know. So, you know, that's the thing in terms of what people, I think, is critical, especially as a young person in the law. Like I see things now, and you guys are what, Gen Z, I guess? Is that right? Lisa, are they Gen Z? I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what they are, right? You're not millennials, right? You're too young to be millennials now. So the hope of America is on you guys, right? Because I think millennials many of them are spoiled brats, you know, and I blame their parents because they get into the law and you hear things like, oh, what do I got to work? No, man, this is the kind of hours I work. When we have a case, we got something going to trial, we're working around the clock, 7 days a week, because if we don't work hard, our clients are going to go to jail. And it doesn't matter whether you think they're guilty or not, that's what they pay us to do. So, you know, like this is the kind of thing that I think is critical for people to understand that, as I said, if your sole goal in life is to make money, go do something else. If you want to make money while helping people, you can make a very good living in the law. But you got to work really hard for it. So, you know, it really depends on your tolerance for you know, I've had people, I've had a lot of associates come through my doors. I've driven about 3 lawyers out of the law, you know? So I'm not an easy boss. And I take pride in that because what we do is not for everyone, right? Not everyone can be a criminal defense lawyer, right? There's many other areas of law far less stressful than what I do. So, you know, when you have somebody's life in your hands, right? Because if you don't do well, they could end up going to jail for an extremely long time. So, you know, and this is not about moral judgment. There are people like, well, maybe they deserve it. That's not the point. I mean, if you have to ask that question, then clearly you're not going to do what I do, right? So people don't understand justice until something has happened to someone they care about, right? So unless, you know, when I say people, oh, that guy, you know, here I've begun on TV and I've said things, you know, I've given commentary about some people, unsavory people, like a Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein is, you know, he's a terrible human being. We're not arguing that, but he didn't get a fair trial. And why is that important, right? He got railroaded. He didn't get a fair trial. With all his money, he didn't get a fair trial. And why is that important? Because a guy like Harvey Weinstein had the money to hire great lawyers, fought this thing all the way, and he still got convicted. Most black people, most brown people, most other people, most middle-class people don't have his resources and get railroaded by the prosecution office, by the government. So if what Harvey Weinstein, people are like, yeah, it's a good deal, he got to jail and all that stuff, getting punished. If he's guilty, he's guilty. But based on the evidence that was presented at that trial, it didn't look like he was. Because I followed it very closely. I covered it for Court TV. I was reading transcripts, and the evidence that was presented was far from sufficient to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But he didn't get a fair trial. And what that means for people who are middle class, regardless of race, lower class, regardless of race, and then you add the racial elements into it, it's a very dangerous thing. So getting back to your question about, work-life balance, if you want to be in the law, particularly do what I do, understand that you're going to have to make certain sacrifices. The one thing you should always do, though, is keep yourself physically healthy. The one thing that I've done is I've always done some form of martial arts my whole life. I've been boxing for the last dozen years. I don't really spar because I'm too pretty to get hit. I don't want to go on TV with a black eye, but it's important to keep yourself in tip-top physical shape and eat right. It sounds cliche-ish. I can't tell you how important that is in the practice of law.
You just touched upon your experience with television. So you are often called upon by news outlets for your legal expertise. So how did that happen, and how has it impacted your practice?
So I always joke around. People ask, "How'd you get into TV?" I said, "Is it obvious? My charm and good looks, right?" So that's what I usually, I make that joke when I talk about it. But it started with because I've had success in the law as a lawyer, right? So I'm sort of an authority. I'm known in New York because of the cases I've handled, some of the things I've done. So one of the things I did was I started writing, right? So we don't have an extensive blog on our website, but we've got some decent stuff. One of the things a few years ago, I wrote a piece about Preet Bharara, who was the United States Attorney here in Manhattan. He's a pretty well-known guy, pretty famous. When Trump came in, he was fired, right? And let me say, I'm about the furthest thing from this shouldn't be about politics, but I'm the furthest thing, I'm not a Trump supporter, let's just say that. And I didn't vote for him. And when he came in and he fired the U.S. attorneys, Bharara made this big stink, because he thought Trump was going to keep him on. This was something every president had done. Fire the United States attorney for the district. So in New York, you have 4 districts. You have 95 districts across the country. Every U.S. attorney, that's the federal prosecutor in charge of a district, is supposed to tender his resignation or her resignation. Everyone else did. He didn't. And he was like, "Oh, Trump told me I could stay on." And then Trump, called him, or somebody called him and said he's fired. It was this big drama thing. And so I wrote this piece about him, basically telling him that, Trump has done something right, which was get rid of him, because he was not, this guy was a showman. He was, I didn't believe he epitomized what it meant to be a good prosecutor. I know a lot of good prosecutors. I'm critical of prosecutors, but I've known many. I was one. A lot of my colleagues I work with were. And so that piece got picked up by Israeli news. So I was on Israeli news. They broadcast out of Times Square in Tel Aviv. And so from there, it started trickling, boom, boom, my commentary. And then to the point now, I have a handler who coordinates my media appearances. That's been a few years now, so.
So the last of our prepared question, then we'll turn over to Lulu for her to ask the questions that have been compiled that hasn't been answered yet. So what advice would you have for our NYU AD undergraduates who are considering going into law in the next few years?
I think I said, just try to get while you're still in school. Is that the question?
Yeah, anything that you would be helpful while we're in school, perhaps a couple years after, maybe even in law school, whatever you deem appropriate.
So while you're in school, if you have the opportunity to work in some area of law as an intern, absolutely do it. That'll really build up your resume. And I want to see that. So I had a student from NYU who applied, who came to me as a senior, and prior to working for me, he was an intern in the New Orleans Public Defender's Office. And then he worked for me basically almost full time the senior year of college at NYU. And then I hired him as a paralegal. And then I was sad, he's in law school now. I miss him, he was great. So if you get the opportunity to work somewhere and do that, then it's good, and build those kind of relationships. They'll last you a lifetime.